Welcome back to Rich Lessons podcast. Today we have on a good friend of mine, Mr. Gary Chambers Jr. He is a Baton Rouge native, civil rights advocate, entrepreneur, and ordained minister who has become a leading voice on economic justice, cultural empowerment, and political activism in Louisiana and throughout the country. Raised in a middle-class, predominantly Black neighborhood in North Baton Rouge, he was raised by his aunt and uncle following his mother's death when he was just 2 months old. After graduating from Glen Oaks High School, Chambers managed key community rebuild efforts in New Orleans East post-Hurricane Katrina and later returned home to manage a car dealership. In 2012, he launched the Rouge Collection, a media platform dedicated to elevating Black voices in North Baton Rouge. By 2016, his leadership catapulted him into the spotlight as an outspoken activist for justice. He organized protests in response to the killing of Alton Sterling and served as a spokesperson for Sterling's family. Since then, Chambers has run for public office a few times, including a bid for 2019 for the Louisiana State Senate, drawing attention to systematic inequalities and the need for bold, community-rooted leadership. We're super excited to have Gary on this episode of Rich Lessons. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to be here, and congratulations to you all.
Thank you. So, the bio never tells it all. What has Gary been up to?
I have been building. I have been focused on educating our people. I launched something called Civics for the People a few years ago, and I've been on that endeavor. I've been to a few parishes around the state this year, plan to go to some more before the year's out. Consulting never stops, trying to help people become better candidates, better business owners, better responding to issues, and being a father. I have a daughter who will be 16 in a few months.
What?
And I am blown away every day at who she is becoming, but also grasping for time because soon she will be an adult woman and she's gonna be out in the world, and I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Yes. Navigating the world. But I feel oftentimes, particularly for like Black girls, Black boys, do you feel like she has to grow up faster?
I think I feel a pressure to inform her of more than other people probably do with their children. I definitely give her the conversations that give her the reality of what she has to deal with in the world, because no matter what it is that we want to do, we have to be overachievers. We have to be standard setters. You can't be average and think that you're going to succeed as a Black person. And so sometimes that may feel like a little pressure, but I try to do it with grace and love though, to get her to see that, like, look, these are the things that give us the ability to get where we're at. Now, this may feel bad today, but and also acknowledging that, you may not like the way this feels, right? But this is the process that we go through to get where we're trying to get.
Yeah, we want to get your complete backstory, even from little Gary. But I'm curious because you are such an advocate. When it comes to your daughter, although we deal with racism issues everywhere, would you like to see your daughter stay in Louisiana, or when she gets older, would you like to see her outside of the South?
My heart wants her to be here because I love home so much, but I want her to have whatever experience life has for her. So we've been in this conversation about college since, middle school. She has never once said she wanted to go to school here. And I have not tried to encourage her to. What my desire is for her to pick an institution where I feel like she's going to be enriched in a multitude of ways. And so I hope that eventually she lands back here. But I also hope that we do more to make it worthy of people coming home.
Yeah. I like when people go away, which I think we all have those moments like, okay, you got to go away and then get some knowledge, some new experiences, then come back and shake some things up. And
before we start recording, though, it's Louisiana from Mississippi, and unfortunately, though, we also have like the top brain drain of like any other state. Like these two states are top for like brain drain, unfortunately, too.
I know so many Black folks who live in other communities from here that are thriving and succeeding in California and North Carolina and Georgia and New York. And they're running major organizations, doing major work, transformational work. They're just not able to do that at home. It's not for a lack of a desire to do it either. There are people who would be in Mississippi and Jackson if the opportunities were there. There are people who would be in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or Shreveport if the opportunities are there. But I don't think that we have in our community and the other communities focused on economics in a way that would bring that level of transformation.
Speaking of economics, and also to little Gary, we had Tyrus Thomas in here who's from South Baton Rouge. Now, you represent
The North.
Can you tell us, growing up in North Baton Rouge, seeing North Baton Rouge today, how has the experience been like for you, and what do you want to see for that part of the city?
You know, when I grew up in North Baton Rouge, so I first lived on Oreo Street in Scotlandville until I was 6. And then when I was 6, we moved to Forest Heights. So that was our Jefferson's moment. We was moving on up. And when we moved into the neighborhood, it was an all Black neighborhood except for one house. And there was a Silvio's grocery store on Hooper Road and a Winn-Dixie, or not a Winn-Dixie, a Piggly Wiggly at the corner of Hooper and Plank. That's 2 grocery stores within less than 5 minutes of my house. I live in the same neighborhood today across the street from my mom and dad. There are no grocery stores in either one of those locations today. And for when I was a kid, there was Earl K. Long Hospital within 5 minutes of my house. Now, was it a state-funded hospital? Yes. Did it need renovations? Yes. But did you get good health care at Earl K? Yes. That is no longer there. There were many assets that existed when I was a kid that made my norm what would be the equivalent of living on any other part of town in Baton Rouge as a kid, because, you know, it may have not been the best grocery store, but it was a good grocery store. It was clean. People smiled at you when you came in there. At least when I was a kid, I remember those things. I used to ride my bike to Sharon Hills Park, Hooper Road Park, with my friends and ride through the trail like kids on the movie, right? We had a pond in the back of our neighborhood. We called it a lake, but it was a pond. And so that my life was real relaxed. I had no clue. I had no white teachers until 4th grade when I got expelled from school. So my parents were very intentional about the environments they put me into. And I didn't know at the time that those things were shaping something, but they were. You know, as I look back to all of my educators, the people who were dripping history on me, I started school at Southern Lab. So at Southern Lab, every year, there's a march to the graves of the founders. So as a kid in 1st grade, and you walk into the grave of these 3 Black folks who've been the president of this institution, that shapes your mind about what Black people are able to do. Now, I didn't know the nuance of how a school is created and all of that. I just knew that the Clarks, these Black folks, got a monument to them at the back of this place in North Baton Rouge. And that's like the window to the world for me.
Yeah, it reminds me of a guest we had on, Sherelle, and she grew up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so she was like, all around her, she saw like Black people that were successful. So it wasn't until she got older where she was like, oh, wait.
I had no clue to some degree. Now, I had cousins who, you know, a little hood,
Right,
you know, whatever.
right.
But that was hood. That wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, like, you know, lack of resource, right? Because we didn't have cable. And I lived in a nice neighborhood, but we didn't have cable. But that's how we moved in that neighborhood, right? I would go to some of my friends in the hood neighborhood, and they had a big screen TV.
Right.
So it was like a measurement of, okay, you have this, we don't have that, but we still measure up the same in some ways. And I also, because I grew up, I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother, and none of us lived in the same household. Mm-hmm. So my sisters lived in Dixie in North Baton Rouge, and my brother lived in Scotland Square. So no matter if I lived in Forest Heights, I never not had a window view into the fullness of the Black experience. But my sisters and my brother are all successful Black people that grew up in those same communities, because even though it was the hood, it had a different tone. It had a different attitude than it does today. There was still a level of pride that existed in those communities that I feel in some ways has diminished over time.
So what do you think it was, right? Was it a flight that happened? Whether that be investment, whether that be people that made the investment leave? Which one do you think came before the other? How did we get here?
I think it's a combination of things, but I think the lack of investment is the start of it all. I think that when we look back at all of the tax initiatives that happened in Baton Rouge over the last 30, 40 years, and Black folks paying into a tax system that refused to pay into their communities, that is where people who had more decided to go get more. I don't blame white people for the condition of Black communities when it comes to flight, because I believe that we have also left our neighborhoods. And it has to be a deliberate, intentional decision in order to live in these communities. Why do I say that? I live in this community where if I'm not there, it would be over police. I've had police officers pull people over. Well, you don't know, I live in the second house on the street. So when you pull them over in my neighborhood, you pull them over right in front of my house and I walk out the door. So when I walk out the door, that changes what happens in that encounter, right? We need more Black folks with the ability to step out and just stand in your front yard. I don't have to say nothing. I don't record them. I don't say nothing, but my presence is enough. And that is something that is woefully missing in our neighborhoods. But that absence of us started from the investment, because I'm paying into this and I want the government to work. I want you to pick up the trash. I want no lots to be overgrown in my neighborhood. I want the potholes to get fixed in my neighborhood. I want 911 to come when I call. I want to be able to get a grocery store within a certain distance of my home without me having to go sit in traffic to do it, right? These are the bare minimum things that don't exist in most of our communities. And that is why certain people opt to go to another neighborhood, but it's the convenience of those things. We have to make a decision with this level of pressure on us. Do we want convenience or community? And community does not come always from convenience. It requires us to be builders.
Absolutely. We think about like New Orleans. I feel like East is having like the same issues that people are saying, trying to get people to move there, to invest there. And they have some of the same challenges. And at one point, similar to what you said, right? Like that's where all the affluent Black people live. You know, that's where people would go when they were moving on up, right? They would actually go to the East, and then a lot of different things. Katrina changed the dynamics of that community.
If 15 Black folks with resources picked a street in the East and said, we going there, it would change everything, because those people would not tolerate certain things existing in community, and they would have the influence to do something about it. I think that sometimes we underestimate the influence that we've grown, and how collectively, if we use that, it has the ability to do something. What happens for us is we so scattered. So that scattering has scattered interest. Previously, the pressure made us all be in the same areas. So you had a Southern Heights get created, right? Mm-hmm. Where this neighborhood is a bastion for Black folks, but it's right next to Skylandville, or it's right next to Banks, right? But all of these people progress because these people live here.
Absolutely. You talk about other cities where Black people are able to go to and have success and economic mobility. We have posted an episode that you commented on, and we're talking about Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yes, I've been looking at these other cities saying some of the same things.
I am always tripped out, and this is no shade at Atlanta when we start saying that Atlanta is the Black
no
Mecca.
No shade to Atlanta. We know how y'all gonna come
to
first.
Atlanta when we say that Atlanta is the Black Mecca. I understand the essence of Atlanta. I understand the vibrance of Atlanta and all that it contributes to Black people. But I also think that there are other places that Black people are doing exceptionally well, but it's not as bombastic as Atlanta is. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the time to study it, though, because that gives us the vantage point to see how do we do this and duplicate it in other places. When I was on the Economic Development Board for North Baton Rouge, Jerry Jones was our Economic Development Executive Director. And Jerry and I were working on a canvas trip to Charlotte for that very reason, because if you look at the metrics of Black folks in Charlotte and the upward mobility of those people, how do we duplicate that? Because when cities are trying to accomplish something, Atlanta may be a stretch for you to accomplish, right? Because if you look at the things that Atlanta has invested in decade after decade after decade, that's what has produced that harvest. But if you look at the gap in wealth in Atlanta between Black and white, It's the largest in the country. So when we have a conversation about it being a black Mecca, how does the black Mecca have the largest gap between black and white in economics in the country, even though we as black folk look at Atlanta as the economic hub for us as black folk? And if that is what we are looking at, then maybe we need to look at a different picture to ensure that we get the level of viability that we desire. I think one of the differences in North Carolina is they have had Democrat governors in that state longer than a few terms, right? So when you're able to put those policies on top of the policies that a Democrat mayor may be instituting, that helps move a community in a different direction faster. Georgia, every black mayor that has stood up in Atlanta has had to stand up to a white governor in Georgia that was not on the same side. And that impacts the ability to move some of those initiatives in the direction that we would like to.
So I'm gonna ask this question before I send it over to Sheena. Louisiana had a Democratic governor. Do you think he didn't push hard enough? Did he not do enough? Are Democratic governors too conservative?
I think there's a multitude of layers to that. I think that one, he could have done more, but I also don't think that the black leadership that we have has pushed them to do more. I think that if you were to have a conversation with John Bell and ask him about the things that he delivered for black folks, he would say, well, I did what your legislators asked me to do. That's what they came and asked me to do. They came and said they wanted this emergency room in North Baton Rouge. I gave you an emergency room in North Baton Rouge. Didn't say you cared about which vendor got it. Didn't say you cared about what the investment looked like or what building that it went into. If you don't make a demand and the specifics of that demand, then what I have learned with white folks, they will always come in and do what they want to do according to what they feel is best. But if you give them a detailed explanation and what you want to see, then most times you can get the majority of those things met. I have learned through these relationships, we don't ask for enough.
Yeah. And so the second part to my question, going back to Atlanta, Charlotte, and something that I was also trying to convey in that message is that people kept responding, you know how many millionaires, PG County have, you know how many millionaires Atlanta have? But I was like, but the average in Charlotte is the average. So do you care about how many millionaires, or do you care about how less people fall underneath the poverty line?
I think that is where we are struggling as a people, because this individualism that we have focuses on what one individual has accomplished versus what we as a people are accomplishing. And so while I am abundantly happy for black folks who become millionaires and become successful, if you become a millionaire but all the other black folks are still in the same condition, that don't do nothing to change the condition of the community. It does nothing to change the condition of us, even if we don't live in the same community. But the vitality of black folks and the strength that we have to exist within this nation as a people is improved by the wealth of our people improving across the board, not just a few of us having enough. And what helps us right now, I was having this conversation with somebody else. You know how many black folks are becoming millionaires because of NIL right now? Mm-hmm. Sports right now is making a ton of new black young millionaires. How much is that changing the community? How many of them are buying fourplexes with those multi-million-dollar deals that they getting versus 20 pounds of weight on their neck? Right. And we have no issue with celebrating that every single day. But there's a ton of young black people that are getting their mama out the hood. But are you transforming the hood? That does not, us taking our mom out the hood has got to stop being the goal. Us transforming the hood so it's worthy of our mothers has to become the goal, so that our mothers don't have to abandon the places that nurtured and made us who we are in order to be peaceful, safe, and prosperous. You don't have to abandon the black community in order for that to happen. You should change the black community and stop seeking to, be in the land of other folks every day.
Yeah, we're just talking about that.
But do you think that, I'm going to use Mississippi, I'm going to use Jackson as a great example, actually. So Jackson has historically, since I've been born, has had a black mayor. Mm-hmm. But we all, like Georgia, we've always had a Republican.
A Mississippi Republican.
That's the difference.
We've always, But people often talk about, the blackness of Atlanta, the blackness of Charlotte, the blackness of Detroit. People don't realize Jackson, Mississippi is the most dense black city in
About
America.
80% black, ain't it?
In America. We are the most dense black city in America, Jackson, Mississippi. But what I have seen, especially of age and really being able to understand, I've seen two things. I've seen mayors, our black mayors of Jackson, who says, y'all are keeping money from us. And they are. They are illegally keeping money from the city of Jackson. And their excuse for it is pretty much, you're not playing the game I want you to play. And the black mayors will say, I'm not gonna play your game. Which I think is a give and take. This is my opinion. I think sometimes you got to play the game to get what you need. But the other side that I have personally seen is they have waited for Jackson to go down. And they have personally and purposely starved the city of Jackson. And now that Jackson is literally at the bottom of the bottom, our roads, crime. Like, we are almost at the bottom of the bottom. You're slowly seeing the other crowd come back.
Take it back.
And taking it back. So I'm saying, to your point of, you're saying these kids are not making the NIL deals and we do have the millionaires, but the amount of people who are instead saying, I don't feel like I can fight this fight because it's too much. And they're just saying, I'm saying from their point of view, I think they're just saying, I'd rather take my mom, and in Jackson's case, I'll just move them to Madison.
So here's my view on that. You ain't never gonna really have nothing if you keep doing that. And what does that gotten us as black folk? We all those of us who got a little bit that moved on to Prairieville, Madison, Gwinnett County, if you're in Georgia, whatever the suburbs of Charlotte are, we moved to those areas. And now when we look at the pressure that we facing on a national level, we need community more than we ever have. If we really knew our history, right, and really understood what they are methodically doing to us, we'd fight differently. I think I've been deep diving into Reconstruction because that is where I think Black Audacity was its highest. And where the level of transformation that we saw for our people was the greatest. And it's also where they try to give us the least information, right? 49 black men were in the state legislature in the 1860s. We don't know their names. We don't know nothing about them. You hear about PBS Pinchback becoming the first black governor, right? But you don't hear about those 49 black men. Why? Because they were all pushing a level of progress that white folks told stories about for centuries to ensure that their children knew, oh no, you got to keep them here, because if you ever let them get a little bit, they're gonna take all this shit from you. How? We took the state straight off the plantation. We think about PBS Pinchback being the governor. There was a black man as the Secretary of the Treasury for 10 years in Louisiana. When he came out of being the Secretary of the Treasury, they investigated the office. They ran the books to see, did he steal anything? Did he misappropriate any money? They found out he didn't. Not a dime was missing. Everything was accounted for. The person who replaced him, the white man who replaced him, stole $1 million from the state, moved to South America, bought a plantation there, and never came back to America. Never came back to him. We don't know our history, but they knows theirs well. And they studied us well. The leader of Project 2025 right now, from Louisiana, went to ULL, got his doctorate studying black folks in slavery in Louisiana. Why? Because we were the most audacious black people in the world at that time. And I think that we have gone so far away from that because there's been an attempt from them for 100+ years to take back the things that they knew we were getting. The proof of that, in Baton Rouge, when black people were becoming the majority in the city in the 60s, they changed the plan of government in the 70s to a city parish form of government from a city form of government. Now, at first it was just city of Baton Rouge. They went to a parish form of government because we were the majority in the city, but not the majority in the parish. So once you change this makeup, now black people are 30-something% of the population. We don't become 50% until Katrina. So how do black people not get a black mayor like Atlanta did in 1972 until 2004 in Baton Rouge? Because people are methodically working against you. That same thing is happening in Jackson, Mississippi. That same thing is happening in Birmingham, Alabama. That same thing is happening in every corridor where black people have numbers to be able to take power. They don't have a problem with a black person being elected statewide in Illinois. Why? You're 14% of the population. We giving this to you. This is to make you feel good. But down here, if you give one position, they're going to take 4 or 5 of them. And the belief in that is we will no longer control this, and this is our ancestors' land. That is their belief.
Now, a couple of things you said that I'm like, oh yeah, that makes me think of this and this. But one in particular is that historically, people have used Louisiana's political playbook on the national level.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you talk about this from where the Democratic Party invests their money, and particularly from how much they give per vote, right? And you make a great case of why the Democratic Party should invest in Louisiana. And so recently, I was trying to tell someone, I forget what we were talking about specifically, but I was specifically saying something that you just said, which was the person that developed Project 2025 from Louisiana. One of our latest Supreme Court justice from Louisiana.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House, one of the most powerful voices, positions in the Republican Party and in America from Louisiana.
And number 2 in the House.
And number 2. See, all these people and the agenda for the Republican Party being developed right here in Louisiana. Why wouldn't the Democratic Party invest more in Louisiana?
And you spent $300 million in Wisconsin. What? Are you kidding me? Nothing about that makes sense to me, right? When you look at Mississippi, is almost 40% black. If black people vote with you 90% of the time, if black women are with you 92% of the time, and black men are with you over 80% of the time, you would not go to a place where 40% of the people in that place are on your side, and then you just got to go get 15%, 20% of the other side to agree with you. You would go with those people? Either you stupid or racist.
Yeah. Or both.
Or both.
I think it's got to, at this point, I don't know, it's got to be a little bit of both.
I think you are either, when I ran against Luke Mixon and John Kennedy, I paid about $5 a vote. Mixon paid about $8 or $9 a vote. Kennedy paid about $40 a vote. What does that mean? That means for the 250,000 people that I got to vote for me, I only paid $5 a vote. For the 800,000 votes or 600,000 votes Kennedy got, he paid $39 per person to get that vote out. In Texas, you need 5 million people to vote to win an election. In Louisiana, you need 700,000 people to vote to win an election. So if I only need 700,000 people to win, right? And the investment is about $5 to get that 700,000. What would happen if I spent $30 a vote, $25? I ain't even asking you to spend what you spent somewhere else. I'm just telling you, if you gave Mississippi $25 a vote, what would it do? We've never even tested the theory to find out. The proof that it would do something is Georgia. The only place in the South where you've seen them really invest in black people is Georgia. What did it produce? 2 Democratic U.S. senators. The only place in the country where you done stole 2 seats in the country
and
is
Georgia, governor.
Right? You don't do that over and over again? Why don't they do it? Now, I know firsthand there are black people in leadership in our state who, when they ask them the question about investing here, they say, oh, a black person can't win.
Yep.
I know there are black people that we love to invite and hang out with, and I ain't gonna cuss no more, stuff like that. Those people sit there and send the investment other places because it's not them. Because if it's not going to be me or somebody in my camp, we ain't going to do that. We ain't doing that. We have to get out of our own way in that way, or we need a generation of us who stand up above that. That we're not, at what point, and this is something our generation has to ask ourselves, at what point do we take our rightful place? Because some of these folks have been running the show since they was 29, and now they 68, and they still want to run the show. Now, I'm not saying you can't be a part of running the show, but damn it, you can't run the whole thing.
Baby, it be to death do us part.
And
like a marriage, they be like to death do us part in politics.
Some of us gonna have to be divorced. Some of us gonna have to get a swift divorce. We're gonna have to be co-parents in this relationship.
Right. Facts.
So I want to jump over to you've definitely have now become someone with a prominent voice within the space of advocacy, advocating for Black Americans, particularly the South, particularly in Louisiana. But a lot of this started when you became the spokesman for Alton Sterling. You can give us a little bit of background on that?
You know, I had been talking about police violence in Baton Rouge prior to Alton being killed. There was a brother named Travis Stevenson who was shot 26 times by the sheriff's department in Baton Rouge in February of 2016. Nobody in our community was really talking about it, so I wrote a column on the Rouge Collection about it. And Savitra knows this. When I first started the Rouge Collection, I had no filter. I said whatever I thought.
You don't have a filter, but I love it.
I have much more of a filter now.
It was levels, baby. Levels.
And that's why I think, to thank God for people who've given me grace over time, right? But there are things that I just said as plainly as it is. I have a process I go through now. I cuss in the house before I cuss on the internet now. So it's less potent. Not that I don't still feel some of those things, but I was talking about Travis Stevenson a few weeks later, right? Earth Day. Jacoby Davis, a 16-year-old young Black man, was at an Earth Day event. His brother was on the other side of the field from him. A fight had took place that day. He's trying to go help his brother or find his brother. His brother's not in the fight. He's not in the fight. He's trying to get to the other side of the crowd to get his brother so he can go to his mama. A police officer tells him, stop. He's like, I got to get my brother. Cops beat him up. One of those cops is Blaine Salamone, who 3 months later shoots Alton Sterling at the Triple S grocery store. I was talking about this same incident 3 months before Alton was ever killed. So on the day that he was killed, Mike McClanahan, who at the time, I think Mike was still the Baton Rouge NAACP president, Sandra Sterling, who was Alton's aunt, like a mother to him, she called for Mike McClanahan. And while Mike was at the house, she said, I want that guy who was standing up there with Trudy White, because Trudy White, months before that, was a judge in Baton Rouge, Black woman, and a reporter was harassing her. I was at a city council meeting. I stood in front of the elevator and I gave the reporter a few choice words and told him if he came on the elevator, there was going to be some problems. He didn't get on the elevator. And a lot of Black folks in the community saw that. Sandra asked me to come to the house. I came to the house, and one of the first things I did was say, we have to humanize this family. Because I had watched Mike Brown happen in 2015. I had watched Sandra Bland happen prior to that. I had watched a multitude, Trayvon Martin, other things that had moved me in other places, but those things weren't in my community. And the main thing I noticed in every one of those situations was we keep slamming these Black folks on national TV without humanizing the person. And they keep throwing all of these things out there about these people that don't make people know that's somebody's loved one. And so the first thing we did was go to the Triple S grocery store and interview Sandra Sterling and the family in front of the store. Before they did CNN, before they did any of those other things, because my role at the time was to give Black folks a place to be able to tell that story. I had no clue that there would be this level of advocacy. I was not attempting in any way to be this guy then. I just felt like, and the way I really got involved in that, I showed up there at the store that morning after the shooting had happened to try to find out what happened. A reporter from the Advocate was there that day as well. I can't think of her name. Maya Lou was her name. And I didn't know her. I was nervous that she was going to write a bad story. So I asked the store owner what happened. I was scared about the story she was going to run, so I went live. That was literally one of my first Facebook Lives. And I think 300,000 people watched that video or something like that. But my reason for doing that video was because I didn't know if this reporter was going to tell the truth or not. So for me, it was never really about, I think I'm trying to be an advocate. I was really just trying to make sure that Black folks' stories got heard.
The truth.
The truth.
Yeah, obviously I've watched Gary over the years, and I did meet you when you were doing the Rouge collection. And you had featured me in that magazine.
Rouge 25.
Yep, Rouge 25. Now, Gary and I have had our
I was blocked on Facebook for years.
I blocked him. We was
Now what you do to Savitra?
we was best of friends, then we was frenemies, but we came back full circle.
We are both very passionate, direct people.
That's true.
That when we have something to say, we are going to say it, and we have not been shy to say it. What I appreciate about our relationship, though, is that it has always been one where we can come back and be honest with each other. And we let each other grow, right? That I know that there are things that I said as a younger person or in my journey that I would not say the same way that I did then. And I think at the time, I don't think we think 10 years down. We're thinking today and not thinking, this person, somebody I'm gonna have to play in the cart with for a while. So if I got to play in the cart with this person for a while, I may want to navigate that a little differently. That has helped me to be better as a human. And the fact that I just don't want, I am never seeking to do damage to Black people. And I think that I have had to learn how to hold Black people accountable without bringing damage. And we don't always know how to do that. When I first became an advocate, my intention was not advocacy, so I did not understand the nuances of a lot of those things. As I've grown and understood those things, relationships are the currency that allow us to be successful in a lot of this. And so if you don't have strong relationships, you don't move a lot of these things as swiftly as you can. I don't have to press a lot of buttons out loud anymore because I got a lot of relationships, and those phone calls and text messages work in a different way than a social media post.
Yeah, so one thing about Gary and I is that I always felt like we were for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Our approaches were different. I was like, I'm gonna go on through the back door. Gary's like, I'm gonna bust through the front door.
Keep it down.
And so our approaches were very different. I think that is what brought the clash when we did clash. But we were always for the same thing.
I ain't gonna say the details, but I'm gonna just let you know.
You had to be
Sister
there.
does not play when she feels like you playing with her. Okay.
We on a previous episode we were talking about her bluntness. I was like, you're
But Twitty said you put two passionate people in the room.
Yeah, she's type A, and
and to her point, we were literally working. In one situation, we were working to help the same person. Right. We were working to help the same person.
Same goal,
but we saw it completely differently. And I have had to learn, how do we get everybody to see things more clearly? I ain't really trying to change people's mind every day no more.
Yeah.
And I think a part of what I was focused on at that time was, I want you to get it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to get it. I don't care if you get it. No, I no longer care if people get it. I care that we get it done. And how do we get it done? Mm-hmm. And sometimes if we have this conflict, we can't get it done. Mm-hmm. Now, we got that done, though.
We did.
We got that done.
So one thing you talk about is, don't talk about your community as a liability, talk about it as an asset. And I think about New Orleans and other places. It's like, I'm still living here. So clearly I must look at it as an asset. But people, I often see online and in the blogs, people just ripping down the cities where they're from. I'm just like,
I think that we have a tendency to overlook so much of the good that takes place in our communities because there are really big issues that need to be resolved. And I think one of the tasks of leadership is we have to get to a point where you get a big thing done that lets people see a tangible. Because I think once people can start seeing a tangible, you can start getting folks to change some of those narratives, right? When we talk about our community as a liability, no business come and invest in that. Nobody wants to come open a new shopping center in a place that you keep saying is a dump. And what do people do? The same thing you do. They look online and they see what are people saying about this area. Yep. So even if the price is right on the property, if you telling me, oh, you're gonna get robbed. I have lived in North Baton Rouge the entirety of my life. Okay? Nobody robbing, stealing, and killing like that in my neighborhood. You can live in communities that are Black in the north side of town, in New Orleans East, and be safe every day. Are there things that are taking place that we don't want to take place in some of these communities? Absolutely. But some of those same things are happening off Magazine Street in New Orleans. Some of those same things are happening in Perkins Road in Baton Rouge. Some of those same things. And what happens with crime, specifically with crime, when you target one area, criminals just go somewhere else, okay? So if you over-police this Black part of town, you're gonna just start seeing a murder happen in another part of town. You're just gonna start seeing a trap house happen in an apartment complex instead of in a trap house because they move into an apartment. They got money. This is really, it's not like a drug dealer can't go rent an apartment or get somebody to get them a spot to go sell a dope right there by LSU, right there where your kids are, because you moved them out the bottom. No problem. I just come in an apartment complex that you ain't gonna see me come in this little Honda, pulling in the parking garage, selling this stuff to your kids. Mm-hmm. It's the same premise.
I always, and I think people need to more like correct people.
Always.
Because if someone is like, oh yeah, you from New Orleans, da, da, da. I'm like, first of all, I don't know if you still read news from the 90s, but a lot has changed.
And the things that, don't make your experience all of our experience. Yes. Right? I think that sometimes we have allowed what some of our cousins have experienced to become the entirety of the narrative of Black people. Right now, we as Black folks are all talking about Thug and his jail calls, right? All of us don't really care, to be honest. There are people in Black America that don't care about some of these things, and this is not the way we function. But based on what the narrative is in the conversation online today, you would think that all Black people are concerned with this level of behavior. Mm-hmm. We have got to get to a point where we stop letting, y'all know what I really want to say, that stuff
go ahead,
become, we cannot allow nigga shit to continue to be the main narrative for us as a people. Yeah. And we do it too often. Yeah. We do it way too often. We allow stuff that is not really Black culture to become the Black narrative. Mm-hmm. And when it becomes the Black narrative, that narrative is used against us in ways that poison us. There are more Black people going to college and striving to become better every day than we are having conversations about. Mm-hmm. There are more Black people who are starting businesses and growing those companies today than we are having conversations about. We are having more conversation about jail calls than the intellectual conversations that we should be having about the pressure that's against us right now. We could literally be in a point where we don't have the Voting Rights Act after October. Yeah. And we having conversations about jail calls.
Somebody posted, it was like, everybody's talking about these jail calls. I was like, in my network or my conversations daily, we ain't talking about no jail calls. But the narrative, it's like, the narrative becomes reality.
It is problematic for those that are really doing things because it becomes a challenge to get the real information out there because the chatter is so loud about these things. Mm-hmm. I have seen people who are discussing this that I'm like, even your perspective is like, okay, this is where we at today.
Yeah. Now, you run for office. Do you want to hold political office? Will you run at any point in the future again?
I don't know. I am not against running, but I never ran because I felt like I had to be elected to be impactful. I felt like in the races that I ran, when I ran against Regina for the state senate, I ran because I grew up in that neighborhood. I had voted for this person. I felt like we could do better. I do think being challenged for real has made a better senator out of her. I think that she produces a little bit more for the community today. When I ran for Congress, I ran because there was a great opportunity. People gave me the confidence to do it, and people helped raise that money, you know. And nobody thought that somebody from Baton Rouge could do as good as I did in that race. When I ran against Kennedy, I felt like somebody black should run statewide. I think that in our state, somebody black should be contending in these races statewide in order to give us a fighting chance to have somebody black elected. And so I ran. I knew it was a long shot. I knew that the ability for me to get there was going to be a tough one. But I also believe that it was the right fight. And the proof of that is the ruling from the Fifth Circuit that just came out last month talks about that race. And it used the data from that race to explain racially polarized voting still exists in America, because 60% of white voters voted for Mixon, even in the Democratic Party. 40% of them voted for me. 76% of black folks voted for me. 24% voted for Mixon. If those numbers bear true, then we know that we vote in our tribes. And so if we vote in our tribes, we still need the ability to pick our own elected officials based on these districts that are made up in a way that work for us.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, that's why I know I'm very disenchanted with the Democratic Party right now. So I can only imagine someone who is not even in tune. How are you feeling about the Democratic Party today?
You know, I get a lot of pushback from people who are in the conscious community about being a Democrat, because they're like, I don't even know how you in that, you know? I understand the rules, okay? I'm a part of the party because based on the way the rules work, this is the best place for me to be.
Right.
Black people have always functioned that way. We were with the Republican Party when the Republican Party was for us. When the Republican Party was and to be clear, was more aligned, not for us. When the Republican Party was more aligned with the things we were trying to accomplish, we were Republicans. When that no longer was Republicans, we became Democrats. I am not married to the Democratic Party. I'm married to black people and our liberation. And in order to get that liberation, this is the vehicle today that is most aligned with helping us get there. With that said, I think the Democratic Party needs to recognize who its real anchors are, and where in every community in this country you have been able to be successful. It has been black people, people of color, women that have helped you to get there. And not investing in black people, people of color, and women is why you keep getting your ass whooped.
Over and over
again. If for me, I can look at where the party is investing in consultants and tell you where they're going to lose. I can tell you right there, if a certain makeup isn't in the consulting room, if a certain demographic isn't in the consulting floor table, not at the end, at the floor table of this conversation, you're going to mess this whole thing up. With no money, we did one ad that 60 million plus people saw. You think I ever got a call from the Democratic Party?
It's just mind-boggling to me, honestly.
Never got a call from the party, state party, or the national party. Now, I've had conversations with Darius Landis since he's been the executive director of the state party. And I've had conversations with Jamie Harrison since he's no longer the chair of the Democratic Party. But when you talk about in the role, never had a conversation at the time that Jamie was in the role in a substantive way. And though I've had a conversation with Darius, you haven't acted on any of the things that I told you to do. So I think that my frustration grows because it's like, if you can't recognize the pressure that's on you today, you never will.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the fact that Louisiana has also had some very powerful individuals at the national level who have not pushed resources back to Louisiana. Probably for the things that you said, it just didn't benefit them, right? Or it wasn't resources that they were going to be able to control, whatever that may look like. Do you believe that, say you have these like pure activists and individuals who then get elected and now they have power, do you believe they can continue that purity, or do they get corrupted? Because I feel like oftentimes a lot of people get corrupted in the process. So how do you stop politicians from being corrupted? Because the people that we see now, the 65-year-olds, 69-year-olds, at one point they were the young advocates, they were the civil rights leaders, and then at some point it's like something changed.
I think we need to be, if we really look up most of the people that we're talking about, some of them tell the story of being civil rights leaders. They weren't really like the leaders.
Right.
They
might have fudged the details.
They came in, they did a little thing, but they weren't always necessarily the frontline person. Some of them were, and I'm not going to diminish the history of some of those who really were. But the truth is, there are people that are there now, and there are people that run for office even today. Their resume does not say that they was ever going to fight for you, yet you put them there. And I think part of that comes from this respectability politics that we have as Black folks, that we think that, you need to have gone to this school, and, is this my soror, my frat? Did you go to this church? And all of these little things like that. And them people sending bulldogs and warriors. Gary Graves didn't have a college degree.
No.
But he was there representing the 6th Congressional District of Louisiana for however long Gary Graves was there. Why? He was there to do a job. What's his name from Lafayette? The wild one.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't
think of his name right now, and that's probably a good thing because we don't need to give him no extra shine. But dude is like a ex-cop warrior. Mm-hmm. They're not sending nice church people to represent them in Congress.
Right.
They're not sending that to the city council. We be running around here sending people because we like them, because they came to our church, because you had a back to school drive. And the reality is a leopard doesn't change his spots and a zebra doesn't change his stripes. If I was a person who was fighting for you before, I'm gonna be a fighter when I get there. If I'm a person who was mealy mouth before, I'm gonna be mealy mouth when I get there. If I was a person who was, hot and cold, don't really know how to speak up on issues, I'm gonna get to office and do those same things. I don't think people become new people. I think that that person gets elevated to us in a different way, but it's because of our expectations. We have not had an expectation of more. And I can say that from having, we had a great relationship with Mayor Broom. Mm-hmm. Mayor Broom was who we thought she was when we elected her.
Yep.
And I think that there was an expectation for her to mutate into somebody different than she had been for 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? That was Sharon Weston Broom. And we got probably the most stretched version of that we could. Mm-hmm. But Sharon was never gonna be, a dogmatic individual in the way that some people wanted her to be, because her approach was never that. And I think sometimes we want people to become something when we should have elected what we wanted.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest issue with the Democratic Party, because people who are like that, I think the Democratic Party purposely labels them as like socialists, like the AOCs, Bernie Sanders, to ensure that they never reach a level of...
To make you extreme.
Oh yeah, radicals, right? And we really look at like Bernie Sanders and AOC.
If you listen to what Bernie and them talk about,
like, wait a minute.
Most people believe that you should have health care, that you should not go bankrupt because you got sick. Most people believe that children should be able to go get an education for free, even to college. Most people believe that your retirement and your Social Security should not be so low that you can't pay and afford to live in the economy. Most people believe that you should be able to have an affordable place to live, to stay in the community that you live in. Mm-hmm. If that's the stuff they talking and you labeling those things radical, who are you and why am I supporting you?
Yeah, well, New York City about to see. Looks like they about to see. The Democratic Party about to see in New York City.
I think that Zoran is a good thing for the Democratic Party that they don't want. I think that Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago is a good thing for the Democratic Party that they don't want to see. I think that Mayor Brandon Scott in Baltimore is a good thing for the Democratic Party that they don't want to see. I think Wes Moore Governor of Maryland is a good thing that the Democratic Party doesn't really want to see. And the thing that all of those people have in common is they are working on policies that are unapologetically going to do something to help working class people. They are also dogmatically in defense of the U.S. Constitution and the rights of their citizens. And I think that that is what the people of this country need right now more than anything. We don't need people with a jelly back for a spine.
Yeah. People said they were like their policies and beliefs are closer to God than anybody else's.
If you say you're a Christian and these are the
Right.
things you believe, you know, these are the policies that most align with delivering those results for people.
Yeah, you're right.
So before we wrap, we want to do some rapid fire questions
All right.
with you. Are you ready? A political or business leader, past or present, who do you love to sit down with for an hour?
A political or business leader that I would love to sit down with for an hour. This ain't rapid for me.
I was just about to say, I'm like, come on, now, it's rapid. You're supposed to throw it out there.
The problem with this is I have had the opportunity to sit with a lot of people at this point.
Yeah.
And so I've checked some of those boxes for me. So that's not
Who's
as,
left then?
How about someone you wouldn't have a chance with? Maybe they're no longer here. But you're like, man, if I had to get a chance to ask them a question.
You know who, a person that if I could get an hour of their time, and Minister Louis Farrakhan. I think that Minister Farrakhan has had a level of attack and a level of understanding as a Black leader that most people haven't.
Yeah.
And I think that he has helped try to organize all sections of Black leadership in ways that most people have not had. And so I would love to be able to understand what that was like, because I think that for me, when you speak and say some hard truths, not everyone can stand that level of pressure. He has stood that level of pressure in a way that most of our leaders could never have taken.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He stayed consistent for so long.
Love him, hate him.
Even the mentioning of his name causes. I did a interview with the Nation, with one of the sisters from the Nation when I was running for office. I talked about the minister on that conversation and said that we watched him when I was a kid at the house. I was on Fox News, right? Didn't even know that was going to be. When you are sitting at the house, you ain't even doing nothing.
Right.
And somebody mention your name and people just all of a sudden start making stories about you. I want to know what are they afraid of with you?
Yeah.
Right. I think those people I have more curiosity about, because you rise up something in the other side that is dangerous to them. And that's something that I feel like gives us a level of depth that we don't always seek out.
Okay. If you weren't doing this work in advocacy, entrepreneurship, politics, what career do you think you would have pursued?
Music teacher.
Okay. I like that. I'm a music head.
All right. Biggest misconception people have about you?
That I'm an extrovert. I am not an extrovert. I am a ultra introvert. I'm at the crib most of the time. I'm super low key. When I go to events, I'm usually trying to be in the back of the room. That's not a front for me. Anybody who's known me for a long time knows I am usually like trying to duck in and out of stuff. I'm not like, I'm passionate. I'm very passionate about the things that I care about, but I am very much like an introvert.
We have that in common. Okay, last question. We always ask all of our guests this, and that is, what is your rich lesson? This is something that could have cost you everything to learn, or maybe it cost you nothing to learn.
That Black people are magical.
I love it.
There is a secret sauce that's in us that has allowed us to accomplish so much in this nation that has tried to stifle us so every time we stuck our heads up. And I learned that through all of the little things that I've encountered through this journey. I met people who were doing this today, and then that person transformed an entire community, right? I've seen people really be dedicated even when it was hard, right? When people counted them out, still sticking to it. The stick-to-itiveness of our people is probably one of the richest lessons. And that's the stuff that makes us magical, I think, because most people would quit under the pressure that we deal with every day. And this is our norm.
Love it. Free game. That's Gary Chambers Jr., everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.